Okay, I think we've got everyone now, so I'm gonna make a start. So thank you for joining me this morning for this webinar on iConnect for Power Automate. I'm Luke McGovern, a senior consultant at Ultima Labs. And for those of you that don't know, Ultima Labs is the product development side of Ultima. So we create platforms and products that our customers can use to adopt automation. And one of those products is iConnect, which we're going to talk about today. And for those of you who are new to it, iConnect integrates with automation platforms to add advanced capabilities such as the automation of Citrix or remote hosted applications, for the support for Java applications, mainframe, SAP applications, and obviously all the standard web and UI applications that you would expect. So a little bit of history. iConnect's been around for about 3 years. It started off mainly as an extension to Blue Prism, which is another automation platform that you may have heard of. But last year we started working with Microsoft to integrate iConnect directly with Power Automate and the wider Power Platform. So I've just got a few slides and then I'll jump into the demo. It should probably be about 10 minutes of slides, hopefully. So just a little quote here. Humans excel at creative and strategic thinking, but we spend much of our time performing repetitive and manual tasks. And of course, it's these repetitive and manual tasks that we want to automate using, obviously, iConnect and Power Automate to free up time for more strategic and innovative work, which is going to bring more value to your business. So some of the workplace challenges that you might be experiencing and why you're looking at automation, and specifically then of Power Automate, is more remote workers. So we're moving into a world where there's more remote workers than before, can create lower visibility. You may need to kind of adopt multiple different systems. You're trying to streamline your workforce. It can be quite challenging when employees are constrained and they have got increased workloads and they need as much time as they can possibly get. And alongside this, nothing has really slowed down in terms of customer demand. So we're seeing greater urgency, higher expectations, and that could lead to decreased satisfaction if you've obviously got greater urgency and less time. So when we look at automation, there are opportunities to optimize the digital workforce, completing those mundane and repetitive tasks faster with proven value, and ultimately freeing up time for that more strategic and innovative work. So another couple of stats here. What would you be able to do with more workforce innovation, higher productivity, and faster time to insights? So this is with Power Automate and iConnect, what you're looking to unlock these capabilities for your business. So there's a few statistics there. So why specifically Power Automate? So what makes Power Automate so powerful? What we've seen is that it's designed for all users of all kind of levels. So Power Automate is a single modern platform. It's created for experts and end users alike, whereas most automation platforms are geared towards the kind of technical audience. So Power Automate puts the power in the hands of those people who are actually doing the work. So as you'll see here, these are the kind of citizen developers, as we call them. So Power Automate is totally flexible and it's able to integrate with legacy on-prem software as well as SaaS applications in the cloud. So what we're seeing here is that for the kind of the growing citizen developer community, which is those kind of end users, business users, we're seeing that community adopting Power Automate because for ease of use, and it makes it flexible for departmental and business users to quickly understand and solve their problems that they're seeing in their business area. While it also offers flexibility and the functionality required for professional developers to use code and to unblock more complex requirements, while also reducing the time to develop and deploy applications. And it also supports the needs of modern IT teams and IT admins to automate those those repetitive IT tasks, while also providing security, compliance, and control over the usage and execution of Power Automate across the IT ecosystem. So where we're looking at automation, we're essentially breaking this down into two categories. So we start with digital process automation, which is where Power Automate comes in. So it's simple and efficient automation using built-in connectors. So it's API-based automation, which enables that no-code development, which sits really well with system developers and business users, because it's it's drag and drop. It's using connectors that are built in that kind of hide all that complexity, and you're just building up your flows and running those to improve your individual productivity. So you can also then leverage other technologies and capabilities across Power Platform. So obviously Microsoft has a wide range of Azure services and things like OCR and AI, and you can leverage all of those through Power Automate. So they're all as built-in connectors. So as it says here, it empowers citizen developers. There's, I think, 400 connectors, might be more than that now in Power Automate. It allows simple automation of modern applications, those which have an API. It provides some level of embedded intelligence, but to enable this, target applications must be API enabled. So unfortunately, what we've seen, says at the bottom here, is that applications which are core to businesses are often legacy or bespoke applications, which then don't have an API and therefore can't be automated using simple digital process automation. So what this leads into is another term, which is robotic process automation, so that's RPA. So that RPA is much more capable, but it's more complex. So it breaks down the barriers to automating legacy software. It mimics user interactions on screen and across systems. So essentially, if your user can interact with it, it will capture that and it will interact with the application in the same way. So it allows you to access all systems, including those which don't have APIs. So as it says here, an RPA platform would enable you to automate practically any application, gives you faster return on your investment and increased opportunity to automate processes. Now, unfortunately, the downside of RPA is that because it's so much more capable, RPA platforms are typically more complex, they're more costly, and they're harder to maintain. So examples of RPA platforms you may have heard of are Blue Prism, UiPath, Automation Anywhere, for example. So the purpose of obviously today's webinar is introducing our product, which is iConnect. So iConnect bridges that gap between the DPA platform, in this example Power Automate, and adds those RPA capabilities by integrating directly with your Power Automate cloud flows. So it adds remote session support, for example, Citrix and RDS. That's Microsoft's remote desktop. And also the ability to easily automate on-premises applications, including SAP GUI, Java, mainframe systems. As it says here, it's instant RPA capability, so it integrates directly with Power Automate. You just drag those actions into your digital process automation cloud flows. And it gives you mouse-driven automation. So we've got a little demo later where I'll show this. And also centralized management of those processes and those workers through our iConnect Orchestrator, which again we'll go through in the demo a little bit later. So very briefly, how does this work? So this is a very high-level architecture diagram, which I'll go through again in the demo, so hopefully it'll make a little bit more sense at that point. But essentially what you've got at the top here is Power Automate cloud flows sitting in the cloud, and they have built-in connectors for cloud-based applications such as Salesforce, Office 365, various other cloud-based systems which you can see through the Microsoft connector store in Power Automate. And what they don't have is connection to on-premise applications. So what we've added here through iConnect is the ability to make these calls out to our iConnect orchestrator, which will then relay those to a virtual machine. So you've got access then to your on-premise applications, such as Excel, Java apps, SAP GUI, mainframe, etc. And if you need to, you can also then connect via Citrix or Microsoft RDS to get to remote hosted applications. So if you've got applications that are purely accessible via Citrix, etc., we can also automate those from your on-premise worker using the Citrix virtual channels, etc. So that's it at the moment for the slides. So I can jump into the demo. If anyone has any questions, I think I forgot to mention at the start. Please, feel free to raise any questions. I'll try and keep an eye on those as we go through. If not, then when we get to the end, we can go through all the questions. But if we don't have any questions at the moment, then I'll just jump straight into the demo. So I'm going to bring up on this screen now. I've got just a virtual machine that I've got running over here, and this piece of software up here is our iConnect agent. So this is what's connecting us to Power Automate essentially. So when I make a Power Automate call from my Cloudflow, it will come to this virtual machine, to this agent, and it will then execute it on this machine. So if I bring up the Power Automate Studio, I imagine some people may be familiar with this, but if you're not, this is Microsoft Power Automate Studio. And essentially, if I go into the connectors page here, you can see some of these connectors that I was talking about earlier. So Power Automate offers, this is the list. There's a lot of connectors in here for all different sorts of applications. Obviously, very tight integration with Azure Active Directory, etc., Office 365. There's all these built-in connectors that you can just drag straight into your process and start to use for whatever systems you want to automate. And if I scroll down a little bit further, our iConnect ones are also published in here. So you'll notice, as I was talking about earlier, a few examples, for example, SAP GUI, Java, mainframe, and then the more typical kind of UI Windows-based applications, and iConnect web browser, on-prem Microsoft Office, etc. So if I go into a Cloudflow and just create a new flow up here, I'm just going to create an instant one for this demo, give it a name. Then once I've got my flow, I can choose what the trigger is going to be. So for this one, I've just chosen to manually trigger it because for the purpose of the demo. But if I was, for example, to delete this trigger, then I can add in all sorts of triggers. Like, for example, I could trigger this from a Power App, Power Virtual Agent. So of course, there's very tight integration with the rest of the Power Platform in here. Other Microsoft products, for example, SharePoint, Microsoft Forms, OneDrive, etc. So I can choose whatever I want my trigger for this flow to be, but for this purpose, I'm just going to manually trigger it. And then the bits I was talking about earlier with the iConnect components is this iConnect Orchestrators up here. So if I move over to the Workers tab, this is our orchestrator where you connect your virtual workers. So I can see I've got one virtual machine that's connected here, which is the virtual machine that I'm on, and this essentially allows you to manage your workforce and decide where those tasks are going to be executed. So of course, because I've just got one worker, it's going to execute on the machine that I have available. You can also use the orchestrator to manage your tasks. So you can create automation tasks in here that then feed your Power Automate flow. And you can also then monitor some statistics about how these flows are running, etc. So it provides you with, an overview of your kind of the health of your solution. But the main, obviously, purpose of this orchestrator is to orchestrate. So it takes the commands from Power Automate and it determines where it's going to forward those to be executed. So in order to start creating a Cloudflow in Power Automate, I can start with adding a new step here. So I've got all the capability of Power Automate natively. So, creating variables, flow control, for example, condition statements, all those sorts of things I can obviously do through this flow. But when I want to get into specifically iConnect actions and automating my on-premise applications, we have this iConnect inspector tool, which is used. It's a locally hosted web page, so it's part of the iConnect installation, and it allows you to just interact with applications and inspect them, basically, so you can decide what you want to do as part of your flow. So in this example, I'm going to run just a test tool we've got here. So I'm going to copy the path to this tool that's on my my virtual machine. I'm going to paste it in here. So I'm telling the inspector I'd like to run this application, please. It's obviously an executable. So I just hit run program. That application will pop up, and it's highlighted it with this red outline to say, this is the window that I found. So now that I've done that through the inspector, I obviously want to build that into my Cloudflow. So I can hit this little drop down here, and I've got a copy action button. And if I press copy action, it will tell me that the action has been copied into the clipboard and to paste this into Power Automate. So I can come over to my Power Automate flow. I can go to the section for my clipboard, which allows me to store individual actions. I can paste this in, and then I've got a launch process action. So when I click this, it will bring in this action from our iConnect connector, and it will add that to my Cloudflow. So you can see here it's passed in the details that I provided in the inspector. So by using the inspector in this way, it allows you to just develop your processes much faster, because I could, for instance, go into new step. I could search for iConnect. I could pick the session connected because that's where the launch process action is. I can come in, I can search for it, etc. But it's going to take me obviously much longer to do this than through the inspector. So the inspector just kind of speeds this up. So once I've got my launch process action, I'm just going to very quickly build up enough to log into this system. So it's telling me, the inspector's telling me that I've got one window here. I can identify it just to make sure that it's definitely the right window. It will tell me some basic information about that, and it will then ask me what action do I want to perform on this element. So because this is my main window, all I want to do is just wait for the application to load. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to pick a wait for desktop element. I'm going to change this to give it a more friendly name that will help me to kind of work with this going forward. So because this is a door entry application, I'll call it the door entry main window. And again, I've got this copy action button, so I'll just hit copy, come over into Power Automate, new step from the clipboard, paste this in, and now I've got a wait for desktop element action. And you'll notice that it's got a different icon because this is coming now from our UI connector. So because I've obviously gone into UI automation, I've got actions from the UI connector, but the inspector also supports, as you'll probably recognize from the other connectors you saw earlier, the same one. So Java, web browser, so Internet Explorer, Google Chrome, and Chromium Edge, SAP GUI. If you want to get a little bit more advanced, you can write your own PowerShell to be executed via the iConnect agents. If you do need to get into a bit of coding, you can do that through PowerShell or .NET. So now I've got my main window. As I mentioned earlier, we can then go into mouse-based inspection. So I press this locate element button, and the inspector will now tell me that it's enabled mouse-based inspection, and I can start to mouse over all my different components of my application. So to identify an element, it's just Control and left click. So in this example, obviously want to input my username, and the inspector will then tell me I've located this element and here's some information about it. So I can see this looks about right. It's called username, it's a input box, and if I want to just double check, I can press the identify button and it will outline that element for me again. So another kind of useful feature of the inspector here is that you can actually live test these actions without having to go through and kind of debug your process. So it's almost isolated debugging. So if I put in some text here, so this is my username, I can press this perform action button, and the inspector will then tell the agent, right, I just want to test this action. Can you just perform this for me and just let me know what's going to happen? So if I press perform, it will input my text into the right box. I'm happy then that this action is definitely going to work when I try and run it from Power Automate. So I can then copy that into my flow again, come over here, again, new step from the clipboard, paste this in, and then I've got my input text action. And as I mentioned earlier, you've got all the capability of Power Automate still through obviously the studio. So if I wanted to, for example, pull this out into a variable, or I wanted to read this text from somewhere else through another Power Automate connector, I don't know, pull something down from a SharePoint list or from Excel Online or something, then I can use all those other connectors to bring that data into my process, and then use iConnect to interact with the application. So a good example of this is when I get to this next field, which is the password field. So I go again with locate element, locate the password box, and actually in this scenario, the inspector's picked for me the input text action, because it's recognized that this is an edit box, but because I know that it's actually a password box, I can come in here and change this action to say, actually, no, I want to input a password, and that's obviously going to then obfuscate that value, and it's obviously added security because it's using a password. But the inspector supports all sorts of different actions. So it's obviously picking input text because it knows it's a text box. So it's intelligently suggesting to me that that might be, my most likely suggestion. But there's all sorts of, left click, right click, all sorts of things that, you might want to do. So wait for these elements, or just get the values of the properties or something, get the current text value. So if I wanted to actually just read what value is in there, then I could do that. But for me, I just want my input password action. So again, I can do the same thing with performing to just double check that that works okay. And when I copy this into my flow, because this is a password action, it won't actually copy the password value, because it's not expecting me to obviously input this in plain text. It's expecting me to get this from a password management solution, for example, Azure Key Vault or something like that. So if I was to have this password stored in Azure Key Vault, I could add a new step above here to go to Azure Key Vault, retrieve that secret, and then pass it in here. But obviously, just because this is a test application, there's no secure data or anything in here. I'm just going to enter the password in plain text because, obviously, just for testing purposes. So my final action here is just to press this OK button. So again, locate the element, locate the OK button. The inspector will suggest to me now, because it's a button element, that the most likely thing I want to do here is press. So that's correct. I'm going to perform this just to check that everything's okay. And I can see that it's now bypassed that login screen. It's logged me into the application. So I'm happy that that's worked successfully, and I can copy that action into my Cloudflow. So as you can see, there's very tight integration between Power Automate and iConnect. I can use this inspector tool to just speed up developing this process. So here, in the past 5 or so minutes, I've built up 5 actions here for me to launch my application, wait for the window, input the username and password, and press OK. And if I was solely sitting in the Power Automate Studio and, for example, going new step, coming through here, searching for iConnect, I could manually create this process, but obviously it's a lot fastest to just do it through the inspector. So the inspector is really just a development tool to speed that up. So now that I've built this process up, I can tell Power Automate using a connection where I want to talk to my orchestrator. So you can see here my connection is to our shared orchestrator, which is this one over here. So this is just a Azure web app. If anybody wants to do a slightly more in-depth technical session on how this all hangs together, then please let us know afterwards. There's an email link that you can email us, and we can go into more detail on the kind of the architecture and how this all works. But I'm just kind of obviously keeping this quite high level at the moment. So it will make a REST call to this orchestrator. The orchestrator will decide, okay, I've got one worker that's connected, so therefore I'm going to send the command to that worker, and the agent will then receive this command. So if I close the application, save my flow that I've just built up, and then press the test button up here, it will allow me to just run this flow and test that everything looks okay. So because I'm choosing to manually trigger this flow, I can just hit the manual button. I can press test. It will tell me to make sure that I've got my connection set up, so the connections to my orchestrator, which I just checked, so they're fine. Press continue, and then it will just let me run this flow. So if I hit run flow, you should see the agent spring into life, and it will start to then run those actions that I've just built up. So it's obviously a lot faster if I do it through the flow run, but I can then see in Power Automate all the history of what's happened. So in my Cloudflow, I've got obviously these green ticks to say that, yep, this worked successfully. So this is the action that I ran, and the process started okay, and I was waiting for the main window, and it exists. So I've got a handle to it. I've inputted my text, and command result is true, so everything works okay. So all of that run history and kind of auditing and stuff is all in Power Automate. So it's all inside my Cloudflow. I can see everything exactly what ran, what worked. Obviously in this scenario, I don't have any failures, but if I had failures, I could, build in error handling to my flow. So then by looking at my flow run history, which is in Power Automate, just in here, I would see what had been going on in my flow, so I can double check that so my error handling is working okay, etc. So that's it for the demo at the moment. I know that's obviously quite a quick run through and just specifically on UI automation. So as I said a little bit earlier, if there is a specific application that you're thinking that you'd like to test iConnect with, we offer a 30-day free trial. So you can request this via the website. You could set it up in your environment. It's fully featured in the free trial, so we'd be happy to obviously allow you to do that, and you could test with your specific application if you have one in mind. But that's as far as I was going to go with the demo for today. So just to finish up, I've got a few more slides to go through, just 2 or 3 more. So you may be thinking, this looks great, but I don't know, I haven't really got an application or a process in mind where I'm thinking about what I could be doing with Power Automate. And we found that quite a lot with customers that we've been talking to, that that they have maybe not too many applications, or that they don't really have like a specific application that they have in mind, or a process they have in mind, until we get to what we've now released as essentially a different edition of iConnect, is joiner, mover, and lever. So we call this, it's called the JML process. So it's obviously joiner, mover, lever. And it's one process that obviously every organization has, no matter what industry you're in. Everyone needs to obviously manage their employee lifecycle. And we found that this is one of the most desirable processes to automate, because obviously everyone has one. Everyone needs to manage their joiners and levers. And it kind of sits slightly in between the two categories of automation that I talked about earlier, so DPA and RPA, because there are certain components of this that you could do through digital process automation. So, if you've got some SaaS-based systems you need to set people up in, maybe there's a connector for it. But then what happens to your on-premise applications? What happens to your legacy applications? What happens to adding these users to Active Directory, etc.? And it didn't really sit with RPA either, because you don't want to, if you give this to an IT admin team, they don't create user accounts through the user interface. They're most likely doing things through PowerShell scripts, etc. So we noticed this and created an iConnect JML edition. So this is very much focused at IT teams who need to improve the security and speed of your joiner, mover, and leaver processes. So our platform is essentially an extra connector into Power Automate, and it adds support for Active Directory, Exchange, Office 365, and Azure Active Directory. So some elements of cloud automation, some elements of on-premise application. What makes us stand out from, you might be thinking, oh, I can do this through identity access management systems, or I might already have one in-house. But essentially what we found that what sets us apart is that RPA functionality. So traditional onboarding and identity access management solutions typically rely on APIs. So through this this journey that I've got here, as a joiner comes in, you're probably going to be provisioning them assets and updating your asset management systems. You're going to be giving them access to your buildings, your locations. You're probably going to be provisioning them VPN access. You're going to be adding them to legacy and your bespoke systems. And those bits kind of sit outside where we've seen traditional identity access management systems be able to assist you with this. As we come around the kind of bend here again, you might have web portals that you need to add people to, and if they have APIs, then you might be able to do this through an IAM solution. But as you saw earlier, we've got full web automation in iConnect to the RPA capabilities. And then just coming around here, you might add them into your IAM managed systems. You're going to add them to your core systems, and then you've got this whole obviously process in reverse when the person leaves. So you want to make sure that you're removing access to everything as quickly as possible to make sure they don't retain any access to your systems. So remove access to the core systems could be quite easy. Remove them from an IAM managed system and remove access to these web portals. But then what happens to your legacy and bespoke systems, their VPN access, their access to your buildings, and reclaiming those assets at the end and updating your asset management systems? Obviously make sure that you keep your these as up to date as possible, so you haven't got to provision, etc., additional licensing, or you've got greater control over your pool of licenses, etc. So as I've mentioned here, many systems don't have APIs, and gaps in the leaver side of this process, so making sure that everybody, as they leave the business, they don't retain access to anything, can really impact on your security. Obviously, if someone's got access to something they shouldn't have because they've left the organization, you want to identify those gaps really quite quickly and make sure that access is removed. So what iConnect allows you to do with the JML edition is it combines that API integration with RPA. So you can do the whole life cycle from systems that don't have APIs through to systems that do have APIs, and then also integration into things like Active Directory, Exchange. So you've got the full suite of capabilities around managing this joiner process, and then making sure that everything is removed when you go through the leaver process. So I'm not going to go into too much detail on this, just because we did a webinar a week ago on JML Edition. So if you're interested in that, I'd highly recommend you check that out. then that's accessible through our website. So that there's another webinar specifically on JML, and as I said, that there is a 30-day free trial that you can do for iConnect that's fully featured. So if you do want to test this out in your environment, you can test it out for 30 days through the iConnect free trial, and also there's a Azure free trial that Microsoft offer. So you can set up all those components of Power Automate and check everything out with your specific applications and use cases.